The number 3 Penn State Nittany Lions stay undefeated, a perfect 7-0 now after a visit to Camp Randall at night. The Nittany Lions take care of Wisconsin by a score of 28-13, but it was not without stress. And now with Ohio State at home next week, there's a lot of stuff we can digest from this game, but there's a lot that Penn State is going to have to figure out getting ready for the Buckeyes. Like, comment, subscribe, rate us, turn on notifications. As always, get at us on social media at State of State Pod. Get in our comment section on YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You get all upcoming episodes of State of State ad-free, commercial-free, plus our entire members-only playlist of past episodes. No commercials whatsoever, just 99 cents a month. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. Justin, this game was both pretty and ugly, as James Franklin put it in the post-game presser. First half, you feel okay about things. It's a competitive game, kind of like you expected from Wisconsin at home. That environment was definitely in their favor. Drew Allar goes down. Dennis-Sutton goes down. Anthony Donko goes down late in the second half. A.J. Harris goes down. There's certainly health concerns, but the glowing takeaway from this game is what a performance by the defense in the second half. What a performance by Bo Pribula to come in and play an outstanding game to take care of things offensively. Penn State did not miss a beat. They changed things up, which was absolutely outstanding. What did you think about, first off, the first half of this game for Penn State?
I think the first half was as expected, right? Going into Camp Randall and playing in a highly emotional space, like, you're going to take their best shots early. So I felt like once we kind of got through that first quarter, first half, and like the score was still pretty close and it didn't get out of hand, playing disciplined football, that you feel good about it. We got to remember that football is a very, very emotional game. And when you think of momentum that happens at these type of places, that's what makes college football so great. So to be able to weather that storm and get to the second half and be able to really put the clamps down and let the talent and coaching shine through, I think was a great overall performance on the road again. But yeah, that first half is kind of what you expected from a Wisconsin game, especially a night game, and Penn State coming back off of a bye week. So yeah, I was pleased, very pleased.
Offensively, Drew Allar was off to a solid start. 14 of 18 ultimately was his line, 148 yards through the air and a touchdown, and then contributed with 4 carries for 8 yards before it appeared he suffered some sort of knee injury. Now, if I'm James Franklin in this week ahead, and I understand you don't have to put out the injury report for quite some time, I'm not saying anything about anybody's health status this entire week getting ready for Ohio State. Let Ryan Day and company think that it could be Drew, think that it could be Bo. I'm very okay with that. But when Drew Allar went down, it was an awkward situation in which he was tackled, and then you could see at the end of the second half he's trying to move around, and he just didn't have the same ability to step into his throws. He sailed that one last throw. He chunked one, and you could tell he was frustrated, went into the locker room early, and then just came out in the second half with that brace on, tried to give it a go, and just wasn't able to. That's a difficult situation because according to James Franklin, Drew Allar was the one who self-reported to him, say, hey, I can't go. That's a tough thing for a starter to look his head coach in the eye, especially the starting quarterback who is the leader of this team, and say, hey, I can't go, handing things off to the backup. And Bo Pribula, shaky at first, but ultimately finishes 11 of 13, has the touchdown pass. I mean, I couldn't have been more impressed with Bo Pribula. Like, what a perfect experience to have on the road, second half, challenging environment, challenging score on the board, and guiding your team to ultimately come back. What did you think about Bo Pribula's performance?
I think when you're seeing the overall, like, just perseverance through this team is pretty exciting, right? Like, just the fact that when things don't go right or they're behind, they don't seem to rattle. Like, they don't have blinking twice. They're not getting scared, and you're seeing it throughout all of the personnel, not just the starters. And I think that's a quality trait of a team that's built to last, right? And when we think about, maybe, again, it was still exciting. I'm not going to say that, or explosive and things of that nature, but for Bo to come in, handle the offense, take some lumps, and then get things on page and still be able to make plays, widen the gap by a couple scores. You have to feel good about this team moving forward, right? Until someone can't even say that there's just not that much talent that you're just going to overpower them with talent, but with terms of the coaching, the perseverance, that like the overall toughness of the team, I think that's what's a little bit different than this team than maybe some of the past previous teams where you can kind of question like, okay, we go back to that fun word of identity. I think we have an identity in this team of like toughness, grit, perseverance, and all those good things. And then they make plays when plays need to be made. So with that being the case, like I think that's a great showing by Bo Perbula.
Just mental toughness and then the physicality on the field, both sides of the ball. It was very evident. Tyler Warren, they tried to go to Tyler Warren and feature him. Credit to Wisconsin. They made it their mission in life to take him away. But Warren was still effective when they asked him to get in there. Was it the explosivity that we saw against USC? No, he set career highs in that game. So I really didn't have an expectation that Tyler Warren was going to do that. I expected Wisconsin to double him or really key on him, be like, hey, let's take him away. Let's make Penn State's wide receivers attempt to beat us. Hats off to Liam Clifford there in the second half. He had some really clutch catches. Trey Wallace had himself a nice game. Khalil Dinkins with the touchdown catch. James Franklin spoke glowingly of him in the past post-game press conference. The one thing I think a lot of people are looking at is that the run game, this is now a couple games in a row where it's just not looked the same, and it looked good early in the season against lesser competition, so that's fine. But once you start playing the meat of your schedule, it becomes concerning. Katron Allen had himself a nice game, was productive on the ground, the rushing touchdown there late. Nick Singleton catches a touchdown pass. That was a crazy one-handed grab in the corner. Singleton, however, was limited when it came to running the ball. So there is this speculation, Justin, of he was dinged up, didn't play against UCLA. Is he more hurt than he's letting on? And what's going on with the running game to your eyes?
I think when teams are forcing, to put it in the quarterback's hands and taking the run away, I think that's what we're seeing a little bit. I think historically, I mean, Wisconsin has a pretty strong defense, and I think we've been playing some good run stop defenses the past couple of weeks. But I mean, keeping it the down and distance manageable is what the running game has kind of come down to. I'm not sure about the health status of the running backs, but where they still fit in, I think that the way that we can attack different defenses in many different ways is very beneficial to that. But again, it's I'm not gonna say it's easy, but when you kind of commit to stopping the run, you're supposed to do what Penn State did, and that's where it starts to loosen up and do those different type of things, so you can then get back to the run game.
How did you feel about the way Andy Kotelnicki changed the offensive play calling in the second half under Bo Perbula? Because it just seemed like it didn't feel night and day. You still saw a lot of the elements of what we've seen so far this season, but you saw a little bit more of the option game, which I was expecting to see more of in this game. And it's like, yeah, Bo's perfect for that. But just the little changes here and there seemed like they really suited him, made him comfortable.
It's extremely encouraging to see a coach that relies on his personnel and he changes his strategy to match his personnel. That's when you start becoming innovative to me, right? Like, I always said, I don't like the word innovative around offensive coordinators, but when you can kind of transition and see like, okay, this player does this, that, and the third, because now we're looking at individuals and we're looking at the matchup. So I can see that that's how he's viewing the game, which, the great offensive coordinators do that. And I mean, he showed that. So he kind of changed it to a little bit, getting him on the move, like you said, the option and things of that nature. So, I mean, kudos to him, and just his offensive play calling throughout the season has been a clinic to watch.
Bo Perbula finishes the game of 11 of 13, 98 yards passing and 1 touchdown, 6 carries for 28 yards. There was the fumble on the exchange earlier. You could tell he was just kind of getting settled in there to begin the second half, understandably so. And there have been discussions now for years in this program, Justin, it feels like, of what would this offense look like under Bo Perbula. We talked about it extensively with Mike Yurcich's system last year, and it just seemed square peg in a round hole sometimes with Allar and the Yurcich scheme. And then when Perbula would be in there, like, man, this worked great. It was almost the inverse in that when you came into this game and then Drew goes down, you send in Bo. I imagine there were concerns from other Penn State fans of like, oh, okay, let's see how he is as a passer, because up until now, Penn State has asked him to throw sparingly. So you and I have talked about it. It's like, ooh, do they trust him to throw the ball? That being said, his patience in the pocket was really, really impressive. And I was thinking back to when Sean Clifford went down recently at Iowa a few years ago, and in came Taquan Roberson, and that was just an absolute nightmare. And I'm not trying to throw shade on Roberson, but that was a nightmare in a situation where the backup quarterback was not prepared to play. That was not the case here. Hats off to Andy Kotelnicki, Danny O'Brien, who's getting a lot of love from Todd Blackledge, who's a friend of the show. We've had him on here before and has talked about Purbulis so much. Like there was patience. He took what the defense gave him. He didn't panic, and he made some really accurate throws. Like the way that he was working through the zone coverage that Wisconsin was putting out there was very impressive. If he has to go against Ohio State, how do you like Penn State's chances?
I mean, obviously you want your starter. So, I mean, do I like my chances? I still like my chances. I think it creates another dynamic for Ohio State to prepare for that they haven't seen too much of. So just with the limited amount of snaps, it gives a little bit of edge of, like we don't know exactly what to expect. And with that being the case, it's like, that I want to say the sneak attack that kind of lends in our favor. I mean, I watched Ohio State yesterday, and they're still a good football team, but they're a very beatable football team.
Ohio State narrowly escaped Nebraska by a score of 21-17 at home, and that Nebraska team certainly has ability. It's been a challenging season for them. I think that's to say the least. The game against Indiana was soul-crushing and demoralizing. So for them to go to the Horseshoe and give Ohio State everything they could handle was very impressive. We're going to get to that when we do our preview for Ohio State, Penn State later on this week, which for all of you that are excited is a part of Big Noon Kickoff at 12 p.m. Eastern on Fox next Saturday. So I know there's a lot of Penn State fans that, might rally around the Big Noon Kickoff stage, and, they could be nice. It might be nice. I don't know. We're going to find out. Let's talk about the defense for Penn State. It just seems like clockwork, Justin, that once you get to the third quarter against the Penn State defense, you're screwed. This Wisconsin offense, to their credit, you and I talked about what's their identity coming into this game. It seemed they were running the football well with Tawee Walker there in the first half, and then Penn State just absolutely put the clamps down, and that was even with Dennis-Sutton going down. The interior of the defensive line really stepped up. I think Kobe King had himself an excellent game and does not get talked about enough of how important of a piece he is within this defense. And Jalen Reed coming up with a pick six. James Franklin talked about it after the game. Momentum is a real thing. You can't measure it, but that was something that it didn't feel like Justin Penn State was completely out of it when that pick six occurred, but it was this just shot in the arm of like, guys, we're in this. And it's something you and I talked about. There are turnovers to be had against this Wisconsin team, and Penn State was able to take advantage of it. What did you think about Penn State's defense?
Like you said, I mean, I keep looking at their defense. So when I think of like Floyd Mayweather boxing matches, right? You're coming out first 4 rounds, you're filling them out. And then next thing you know, the boxer can't touch them. And then they're punching you in the mouth like later in. And it's just like suffocating. So that's kind of the mentality that I've seen throughout the defense. And like, man, yeah, we finally got a pick six from Jalen Reed. That was an awesome thing to see. I mean, I was also like impressed by, obviously the striking ability from all the linebackers, and then Zion Tracy. I think give him a shout out, just playing in the slot, punt returning, and doing different things of that nature. He just kind of jumped off the screen to me a little bit. I don't know all the details of like assignment and things of that nature, but from just a playmaking ability, just the movement out there, I feel like they match up pretty well from a neutralizing standpoint, right? Like just across the board. So I think we have to take advantage of, creating possessions and putting points on the board to become from very good to an elite defense. And I think right now we're just a very, very good sound defense. And then it's just kind of a stranglehold at the end. And the thing that really goes well with the defense is that I think the defense and the offense plays well together. Like the way that the offense attacks, the way the defense plays defense it goes hand in hand. So where it seems like the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator are on the same page of like, all right, like an overall chess match. Like this is how we're going to approach it. This is how this place is going. And we're going to loosen it up a little bit. We're going to get a little bit more tighter. And it's a good thing to see. I'm excited about next week.
It's funny because like you hear the phrase complementary football, and that's exactly what Penn State has done all season long. You see balance offensively, you see balance defensively. I know that's hard to really articulate, but still the complementary football, one side picks up the other when it's necessary. And I think there's going to be instances as well against Ohio State where Penn State can get some turnovers. You do have to turn them into points, however, against this Ohio State team. It's not always going to be a pick six or a scoop and score or something like that. But if you give the ball back to Penn State's offense, the offense has to capitalize against Ohio State because they can score in bunches. The Oregon game was a perfect example of their ability to strike over the top in a variety of different capacities. The thing that's interesting for me is Penn State shut down Wisconsin's running game in the second half. The quick game from Wisconsin was effective in the first half. Braden Locke, some risky throws here and there. That's something I think we kind of anticipated, is that it's more of an air raid style passing attack. So they were trying to get the ball out there, and they have some athletes at receiver that Wisconsin was able to get open at different points. But for me, I was looking at the way that the secondary for Penn State was playing, and it just felt like they really put the clamps down in the second half. Zakee Wheatley, hats off to him with that outstanding stop on fourth down there very late in the fourth quarter to ultimately seal the win 28-13 and just to protect that lead. There were a lot of people talking on social media. I'm curious what you think about this. Is Penn State continues to play man defense in secondary almost the entirety of the time. And that's been a staple of Terry Smith, and that's been a staple of Lockdown U for quite some time. But there were certainly questions of, are you comfortable giving up 7 yards at a time for just about every completion that we saw Wisconsin get? Because if they had stuck with the quick game, they could have had more success. And I look at what Ohio State is able to do with their receivers, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, the list goes on and on. Will Howard is no slouch when it comes to throwing the football. Do you think it's possible Penn State throws in some wrinkles of zone against Ohio State?
Sure, you play some split zones, go from two man and different looks, but I think from your base being man, it gives you a personnel advantage because you're playing tighter coverage, and like making 7-yard throws in man coverage or even tight coverage is something that you keep doing that. Like keep doing it, and then we'll get one like we did later in the game, right? We do it, and like even in that situation, it would look like a man pressure, and then Jalen Reed kind of backed out and sunk into the hole, and boom, you gotta make a play. So like it's all part of the chess match. And when you're just bases coming out in that man look, I just think that's a kudos to the coaching and the personnel that's on the field, and then from there, you can do a lot of different things just as long as you're making everything look somewhat similar, and then kind of be able to transition to zones or trap defenses and things like that. Because you're right, Ohio State does have an explosive offense where they can score at any moment. So if you can play man-to-man with them, that's, I think, your best bet, because when you play zone against teams like that, that's when you're giving up the 12, the 14-yard passes, and you're manipulating different things. So I'm more of a fan of the zone type of situation man situation that we're playing currently.
It's man, and then it's just lulling the quarterback to sleep. You're expecting man, you're lining up in man, and then bam, robber coverage, the pick that you mentioned, Jalen Reed just dropping in the zone. Braden Locke just, I guess, didn't see him. He was standing right over the middle, but no pun intended, was locked into his receiver.
Kept thinking man.
When it comes to the front seven for Penn State, as I mentioned, I was so impressed with the performance of Kobe King. Dennis-Sutton goes down, and he's a body that you would certainly like to have for the Ohio State game. So again, we're looking at Allar, Harris, Dennis-Sutton, and Anthony Donko as guys of, okay, are they going to be able to go against Ohio State? It didn't appear that what they sustained on the field was something that was like they got to be carted off, and it's a real problem. But again, we don't know at this point in time as we're recording this, and then I sincerely expect James Franklin to keep everything close to the vest. So you need all bodies possible. But the front seven for Penn State, Zane Durant, Devon J. Thomas, I got to remember his name consistently, Hakeem Beamon, Smith Vilbert stepping up, Amin Vanover stepping up, Abdul Carter doing his part in different places. You could see the way Wisconsin was trying to take away the pass rush of Penn State with the quick game, but still, this defensive line really made things difficult for Wisconsin. And I know this is going to be a step up in competition, but it feels like that's going to be a huge matchup to watch against Ohio State, because Ohio State could not run the ball against Nebraska. And that is an interior defensive line for the Cornhuskers that is solid. And I feel like Penn State could duplicate that performance. What did you think about the defensive line play?
I thought the defensive line play was solid, right? Like overall, especially dealing with some injuries. They created pressure when pressure was needed. But there were some lapses in, I think, the run game where we are giving up a little bit, and there was like some holes to run through. So that needs to be cleaned up. But overall, I mean, win 2 scores and win by 2 scores up in Camp Randall, it's hard for me to be overly critical.
I completely agree. And again, 2 out of the last 3 weeks, road games where you were down at half and you made your way back and you won the game. Those are character building opportunities. And I continue to just be so impressed. And you said it before, no one was phased, next man up mentality. No one was demoralized. It just kept rolling for Penn State. And now sitting at 7-0, you're about to host Ohio State. What, if anything, do you look at what Penn State is doing and is capable of that it's like, this is going to have to improve against Ohio State in order for Penn State to take out the Buckeyes?
Play the same level of football, right? And just continue to make some plays. I think the turnovers is going to be a critical piece moving forward. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be a dogfight. Like, that's what you can't expect anything less. So I mean, if they continue to make big plays on offense, control the clock, control the different pressures on defense, and have some turnovers, I think it's a very likely chance that we get the W.
This is undoubtedly the biggest game of the year coming up, but hats off to everybody as a part of this Penn State football team that pulled off what was a gutsy win. And I know there's some people that might look at it and be concerned, but you understand your starting quarterback goes down at the end of the first half. You lose your starting defensive end in Dennis-Sutton, your offensive tackle, Anthony Donko, who's had some injury issues this year, banged up. A.J. Harris, one of your starting corners, banged up. This was a full team performance. And I know that's such a cliche thing to say, but really going on the road to get this win, it was a character building win. Some people look at the record of Wisconsin, but that was a team that was trending in the right direction, certainly had everything to play for, had momentum at one point there going into halftime. And Penn State just put the clamps down in the second half defensively and offensively. I cannot overstate how good that performance was by Bro Bula. So now it's a question of, how do you attack this Buckeye defense, and how do you keep pace in terms of scoring? I think that's one thing that this Penn State team has shown. They have the ability to score points, but I don't know what that over-under is going to look like. I don't know what that spread is going to look like necessarily. Check out our friends at Bet Online for all that information. But still, this is going to be a game that is going to be in the trenches for Penn State's offensive line. I think they're going to be able to have success. They have to be able to negate the pass rush, but there's so much here that if you have Allar and if you have Dani Dennis-Sutton, so we have so much to see that can happen in the next handful of days. Like, comment, subscribe, rate us, turn on notifications. As always, we appreciate you guys so much. Get at us on social media at State of State Pod. Get in our comment section on YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You can get all upcoming episodes of State plus our entire members only playlist for 99 cents a month, commercial free, ad free, no ads whatsoever. If you become a member, hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. Penn State remains unbeaten. The number 3 Nittany Lions win 28-13 at Wisconsin on the road in a night game environment. And now they will host the Ohio State Buckeyes.